Hi everyone, I hope you're doing well. It's Ren here. As you can see, I'm looking a little different than usual in that I'm wearing the scarf. This should not be particularly disturbing or striking. I'm not even cold. I just sometimes, I enjoy hanging up around the house wearing the little comfy scarf that my mum got me for Christmas. And so that's kind of what's happening. And also we have a little painting. I think this is like, I don't know who it is by. Obviously it's my friend, in my friend's possession. Hugh McMahon is the name of the painter, so if you want to check him out. I have a sneaking suspicion that it is like a painting that by someone that Sarah Jane knows, because she would be the kind of person to know a lot of artists. She's a goldsmith herself, which is really cool. I was having a chat with her earlier, and we had a good few chats today. And at some points, she described herself as a goldsmith, and I said to her, "Well, I'm sorry. Until now, we've known each other for 9 years. I've always described you as a jeweler." But she works for a jeweler, but within the jeweler's shop, she's not a jeweler. She's a goldsmith and a silversmith. And then we had a chat about how in French, the word for goldsmith is orfèvre. Whereas I think the word for silversmith is argentier. So literally, if the word for silversmith is argentier, that would be the exact same as silversmith, but in French. So kind of on the surface anyway, a sort of, you could say, a relatively generic, boring name. Somehow, not at all the case with goldsmith. If the word in French were to have been the generic equivalent of goldsmith, it would have been aurier or something like that, because or is gold, in the same way that argent is silver. And in fact, the word orfèvre begins with or. So far so good, but then instead of ye, which would be kind of would have the banality of the word smith, the suffix or the second part of the word is fèvre. What's quite interesting is that if you think about it, fèvre sounds a bit like faire in French. But faire in French can also have a dimension of crafting, smithing. And so smithing in French would be a very unusual word. And smith would be an unusual word also. Fèvre, well, it doesn't exist. It's always accompanying orfèvre. But the two together, my God, it has a really beautiful sound. And that's words for you. You know, I was reading Proust earlier on, and Marcel Proust is very, very good at emphasizing how words end up having their own personality, their own life, their own identity, sometimes full of nuances, simply by virtue of having a certain sound. They instill certain emotions, they instill certain kind of memories. We associate things, and it's to me, sometimes when I read, I'm often concerned, philosophically speaking, with the question, is everything ultimately physical? Do we live in a purely materialist world, Is everything really matter, for instance? I mean, there are obviously lots of people who believe that, and there are people who don't believe that. Most people who are religious do not believe that, although it's possible to be a religious materialist. is quite unusual, because God is usually conceived in non-material terms. And there are very complex arguments against the idea that the substance, if you want to call it the substance of the world, is only matter, is only physical, let's say. And yet, when you read someone like Proust, I find that you access a proof against materialism, material monism, if you like, not open monism, because my monism, if I have the pretension to argue that I have my own monism at this point, my own monism is not a monism of matter, it's a monism of being. It's different, but someone who's a materialist would be quite uncomfortable, I think, reading Proust, who doesn't care too much about presenting arguments for or against the, you know, the pure possibility of reducing the substance of the substrate of the world to matter. But by the very fact of saying names themselves, and obviously names are not material things, kind of have their own life. Orfèvre, goldsmith, silversmith. And there are some weird words in English as well, you know, that can have their own little ring, their music. And then, like, when they pass into a person's, you know, they're filtered through a person's subjectivity, they acquire yet more meanings. There is this aboutness, this content to the very words that interacts with a person in a way that goes way beyond anything that materialism could capture, unless at the price of sounding ridiculous, you know, saying, well, you know, these dimensions, these emotions can really be reduced to these firings in the brain. I mean, there is something very, you know, Wittgenstein himself, he was not necessarily a philosopher who was, well, he had some mystical insights, but mostly, you know, he was an analytic philosopher. I mean, he said the reduction of the substance of reality to pure physicality or materiality was, I can't remember exactly how he phrased it, but he said it was unbelievably stupid. And I don't think Quine would have been very happy about that. But anyway, so I've been freewheeling, as you can see, just easing myself into this video. But it's good because, you know, these days I really am in this in this philosophical mindset. So I'm pondering and musing a lot of the time, just the way I'm doing it now. And it's true that names are a very fascinating topic for a philosopher, for a writer, for a philosopher, for anyone. The way that names, whether our own names or, you know, names of things, influence how we see things, and how the way that certain things that are a bit scary rarely have very pleasant names. Anyway, apart from that, what could I share with you today, guys? Had a lovely day. It's been nice to have Sarah Jane over. She's not working today. She's actually shopping at the moment. She'll be back shortly, but I think I'll go for a little walk myself. So it's been really nice to have her around. I'm still not quite sure what type to give her. And this is really something that maybe you guys can help me with. She is a goldsmith. Now, that doesn't in itself provide any particular indication as regards what type she might be. Any type could be a goldsmith. She's definitely a feeler. I mentioned that before, and she's definitely a perceiver. I mean, I'm not going to go into the detail of why I think she's a feeler and a perceiver. She uses FI, and she uses she uses FI, And let's say that her FI, which she uses, is one of her two main functions. Now, you know that if someone uses FI and if the FI is one of the two main functions, you're talking about an F-type who is a P-type. So you're talking about an FP. There are 16 types. 4 of these 16 types are FPs, and they all have in common that one of their two main functions is FI. And so that's Sarah Jane. So we have limited her possible type to 4. ESFP, ENFP, INFP, and ISFP. It's not easy for me to figure out whether she is an SE user or an NE user, and neither is it easy for me to figure out whether she is an extrovert or an introvert. She says she is an introvert, and she's always identified as an introvert. I just find that she has an extremely busy life. She's always going about doing things. She rarely sits down. You know, when we are in this apartment, well, it's not an apartment, it's a house, together. You know, when we exchange, when I see her here, it's very striking. You know, it's so striking that in many ways it could be easy for me to feel self-conscious. And in fact, if I'm relating this, it's probably an indication of the fact that I have been a little self-conscious. Not negatively self-conscious, I guess, but I have certainly compared myself to her in a way, insofar as, you know, last weekend I spent a bit of my time being hungover, which is not the case today, but so I was a bit more calm and a bit more chill, as you might have noticed, than I usually am. But even in general, you know, like, I find that I'm not nowhere near as bubbly. I wish I were, you know, and I can be in restricted, limited, temporarily limited situations. Like at the weekend when I was out with my friends, actually was one of the livelier people there. That doesn't necessarily mean that I was lively. Maybe it just means that they were not, or less than Sarah Jane. And I have to say that even though I have known her, Sarah Jane that is, for 9 years, I was always convinced that she was not quite as I guess, you know, just in for the bustle and for just so extremely vivacious and active and finding it hard to settle down almost, which says something else. You know, we often hear one never really knows another person until they have lived with them. I mean, I don't know if you can say that, because I like to think that there are people I know, even though I've never really lived with them. It does require a lot of time. Maybe when you live with someone, you get to know them quicker, and they reveal more facets of their personality quicker as well. And I must say that Sarah Jane, I knew many facets of her personality before that, which I have not changed my mind about. She's a profoundly good person, good-natured, smart, has very great taste, as this house shows, and as the stuff that she makes as a goldsmith shows, and she's talent, she is so many good things, not really any bad thing. And I'm not saying this because I'm afraid she might watch the video. She's mature, she's 39, so I guess maybe that isn't partly why, but you know, you can be 39 and not be mature. And I have encountered people who were quite a bit older than that and quite strikingly immature. But on top of that, she just is so dynamic, to the point of almost coming across as a little hyper sometimes. And that I had not seen, and it's really fascinating. You know, someone that I knew so well and that I know so well, but I had not picked up on that. Suggests that really, to get to know a person, it's not just about the intensity of the knowledge that is in question, it's also about the extensity of it. You know, in philosophy, you have a distinction between extensionality and intentionality, and I'm not going to go into the detail of what that means, but essentially, you know, if you know something intensely, it's almost like you know something, you go in depth about a particular aspect of the thing, and you know it's in the great depth. And then the extensity, if you want to use that word, for me, would not be so unusual to use a word like this. Because in philosophy you use these strange words all the time. But the extensity of my knowledge of Sarah Jane turned out to be not as good as the intensity of my knowledge of certain facets of her. And I guess that applies to any friendships or any knowledge of anyone that we are familiar with, that we consider friends or acquaintances or family. I just find that kind of distinction. It's what I love about, for example, philosophy, but that could be any other discipline that gives us a certain vocabulary to make more precise the different dimensions of how we interact with people, how we get to know them, these different things. And so with Sarah Jane, I got to discover that new facet. And it's a facet that has really made me wonder, what is her type? Could she be an extrovert? I've asked her the question. And her answer was, I'm not an extrovert. But with time, I have made an effort to become more extroverted, to be more enterprising, to just move about, do things. Which to me is a very good answer. And it makes sense. You know, she's 39 and she's lived here for a while. She's very resourceful, very can-do person. And it's quite possible that she got to where she is in terms of her apparent extroversion, or at least the dimension of extroversion in her otherwise larger introversion. It's quite striking. And but then, somehow I think that maybe I have a bias towards conceiving of ISFPs and INFPs as quite manifestly introverted and not easy to conceptualize as if not extroverted, at least flirting with extroversion in certain instances. Although I actually do have some friends, especially in Marseille, who are INFP and who can come across as extroverts. Not quite, to be honest, but I ask myself the question, is that person INFP or ENFP? I did ask myself the question, perhaps Sarah Jane is INFJ, because with INFJs it's a lot more common to have that, you know, most extroverted introvert kind of thing, which is a true thing because of FE. INFJs can be INFJs and very much come across in very specific instances, like me at the bar maybe last weekend, as extroverts. But she doesn't use... She's on the FIT axis, if you like, and her T, I think, is relatively well developed as well, which could suggest, you know, her being EXFP. Her SE is developed. Maybe I have this caricature-oriented view of the ESFP type that makes me think she cannot be that. Because after all, they're partying all the time. As if that was all that the ESFP was. Of course not. But I don't think she's an SE Don. But she uses SE well, you know, and when I say she uses it well, I mean like I think, or could it be NE and T? It's very difficult with her, because when I discuss MBTI with her, she seems to jump around ideas and to be super curious, almost like an ENFP would be. And she has that kind of energy. She's really energetic, I find. But she doesn't take compliments well, so she denies this, but a little bit. She says she likes to keep busy, which is something people like to do too, and they can become used to that. So, long story short, I'm still hesitant. Part of me would like to think of her as an ISFP, but perhaps that is only the facet of her as a goldsmith combined with my preconceptions. Another part of me would like to see her as an ENFP, but that would be kind of ignoring the fact that she knows herself really well, and she tells me that she feels at heart like an introvert. Maybe she ought to be trusted, especially since a well-balanced FI user, often they know themselves well, you know, so so many questions to settle, and this is not the only big question regarding one of my friends, because my friend Rachel, whom I've mentioned before, really I've interacted with her again last Saturday. It was really great to catch up with her again, and the more I talked to her, the more I realized, no, her type is not necessarily ENFP as I thought it was. Oh, someone is arriving. I'm recording a video, so I'll finish it because I'm nearly done anyway.
No worries.
Well, Sarah Jane told me that she would be here in a longer, later, so she tricked me. I was discussing being uncertain about your type.
Oh yeah, it's a mystery to me too.
Yeah, so mystery to be resolved soon. It's already been over 20 minutes, guys. So I will leave you be. I hope this video was interesting, and I will catch you in the next video. Ciao.